Inez, let's go with the incitement thing for a moment. Because, look, I'm all ears. As everybody knows, I don't worship Donald Trump. I think he's been a good president. But I heard incitement so much, I decided to go watch the entire speech myself. I heard a man who thought he had the election stolen from him. I didn't hear some incitement of violence, but people hear things differently. What did you hear?
I think he certainly riled up a crowd that was already riled up. That being said, it much falls short of the legal standard of incitement. And if we were to apply this kind of standard of incitement to political rhetoric, there's a lot of other folks that would sweep into, right? Starting with, for example, anything that Bernie Sanders has ever said about making sure that the system is rigged, and we have to make sure we have to totally upset the system. Well, of course, there was a violent man who took those words too seriously and tried to execute a GOP congressman on an Alexandria baseball field. Bernie Sanders wasn't guilty of incitement then. Donald Trump is not guilty of incitement now. Only the people who committed violence are ultimately responsible for that violence. That being said, I do think that we need a conversation about the temperature of the rhetoric. And I do think that Donald Trump contributed to that. And I think that the left contributes to that kind of high temperature with their rhetoric all summer, where they excused violence in the streets all summer. Neither of these things are helpful. I'm glad that Trump has come out with a statement that has turned down the temperature of his rhetoric a little bit and has accepted the results of the election. We'll see if the left follows suit at all. If this impeachment attempt is any indication, though, I don't think that's going to happen.
Inez, tell me how this stops. Because I don't see, look, I don't want to be a pessimist, but I don't see the right becoming less angry because the left is going to keep poking and poking and poking. I don't see the left deciding, well, we shouldn't punish these people. 4 years of Nazi white supremacists. They believe it and they're out to get them. I don't see who turns down the temperature. Who turns it down?
It's a really hard question to answer. I think the only way forward is to rebuild trust in our institutions, like trust in the media, like trust in the government, like trust in our engines of culture, education system. How to do that is an incredibly difficult task because right now the gatekeepers of all of those institutions are insisting that they have absolutely nothing to do with the situation that we find ourselves in now. So all I can say is we either need to build new institutions dedicated to some kind of common good and common pursuit of facts. This is not what has happened in the media. I think the media is the most immediate example of this. It's not what's happened in the media, where essentially the left-wing media has spent, and the corporate media have spent the last 4 years, trying to find any explanation other than their own sort of malfeasance and their own the mistrust they have rationally engendered in millions and millions and millions of Americans. They have not wanted to look at themselves at all and their role in this. And instead, they've decided that 75 million people in this country are bigots or were convinced by Vladimir Putin or now after this Capitol riot that 75 million people in this country support political violence and they all support what is now being called domestic terrorism. These are all excuses, and they're dangerous excuses for the gatekeepers in this country to refuse to look at their own role in polarizing people, in making people mistrust the mainstream news so that they go and seek alternative sources and are not always able to tell the difference between, alternative sources and mainstream news, because the mainstream news has gotten really important things wrong so many times, and they have lied so many times to people that people are willing to trust Alex Jones more, or willing to trust, some crazy guy like Lynn Wood. A real examination of any kind of serious attempt to move forward in a more peaceful way in this country has to start with an examination of the institutions and how we can rebuild them and rebuild some kind of legitimate public trust in any shared institutions, because that's the only way we're getting out of this.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.